Hey folks, Rue here. Just wanted to let you know that this episode of Ruel's Running Podcast is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people get special life insurance rates. Health IQ can save the listeners of Ruel's Running Podcast up to 33% because physically active people have a 56% lower risk of heart disease, a 20% lower risk of cancer, and a 58% lower risk of diabetes compared to people who are inactive. Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people, including runners, cyclists, strength trainers, and more. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/Ruel or mention the promo code RUEL when you talk to a Health IQ agent.
Podcasting from somewhere in the San Francisco Bay Area, the birthplace of Bruce Lee, the iPhone, and the bendy straw. This is Ruel's Running Podcast, a podcast about running, health, family, play, and an NSNG lifestyle. And now, here's your host, Ruel.
There was a dream a million miles away. There was fire in
Amazon.com. You know, I won't be surprised if more and more stuff that I shop for, buy, and get shipped to my home comes from Amazon. It's just a reality, right? And if this is your reality, go to ruelsrunning.com, click through to the Amazon banner to get to Amazon. Why am I asking you to do so? Well, it is a no-cost-to-you way. If you like listening to Ruel's Running Podcast, it is a way that you can help the show out without spending more than you've already spent while shopping at the good folks at Amazon.com. So help us out. Go to ruelsrunning.com, click through to the Amazon.com site, and shop, connect, and enjoy. All right. I'm recording.
Outstanding.
Hey, everybody, it's Ruel. Welcome to Ruel's Running Podcast. I'll say it again. It's Ruel Abadam, your host. If you are a return listener, welcome back to the show. Glad you're here. If you are a new listener, welcome. Glad you're here. Glad you stick around. Hope you have some fun. Maybe learn a thing or two. Today, guess what, folks? We have a very special guest. I'm really excited. Oh, my God. We have the one and only Jimmy Lee from the Inner Fire podcast. Hey, Jimmy, you there?
I am.
Oh, yeah. How you doing, man?
I am fabulous. Thank you for asking.
What's going on in your world?
I'm working on the podcast. I'm living my life. I'm raising my kids. I'm just basically what's going on in my life. I have taken back control of my own health, fitness, and peace of mind. And I try to show other people how they can do that too.
Fantastic. So what happened that you were here that you needed to sort of rein things in your life? What was going on with you?
Okay, so, I used to be a pretty fit guy. When I was a kid, there was a period where I was the fat kid, and I did not want to be the fat kid anymore. So I beat childhood obesity. I got in shape. I lost a bunch of weight. I became, pretty fit and athletic. And oddly enough, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. But now looking back on it with the knowledge I have, when I was a kid, I basically fell ass backwards into figuring out zone 2 training and intermittent fasting. And that's what allowed me to beat childhood obesity and eat a standard American diet for a long time and stay really fit and really healthy. And then when I was 26, I changed jobs. And in my new job, I ended up working with some chemicals, some different solvents and cleaners and things like that. the main ingredient in all through most of them was a chemical called polyalpha olefin. That's PAO. You see it abbreviated PAOs. It's a really common industrial polymer. It's actually pretty freaking amazing. It has a wide variety of applications and uses. But the way I was using it, it was in both liquid form in an oil as well as an aerosol. And so the environment that I worked in was actually a pretty toxic environment. So this, through a couple of years, this PAO exposure, it ended up soaking in, in through my skin, got it in my lungs and stuff like that. And my health and fitness was just ripped away. So over a decade of health and fitness that I had built up was just gone within, really a couple months of working with the stuff. My health started to decline. But after a couple years, I was a whole different person. I was totally broken. Massively insulin resistant, overweight, severely overweight, could not lose the weight no matter how much I worked. And through this whole time of gaining weight, I was exercising harder than ever, right? So I was running. I started to gain weight, and I said, oh, man, this sucks. I guess I'm just getting older. This doesn't make sense. So I started pushing the running more, because we all know that running can be a really good exercise and really healthy for us. And it was also part of my job at the time. So I started really pushing the running and kind of giving up on everything else, just wanting to sweat it off or whatever, burn it off as best I could. And then I noticed I couldn't run as fast anymore either. My breath was gone. I had no more endurance. And people would say, not just people, but we're talking about medical care, doctors, providers, they say, well, you're slowing down because you're overweight. You lose the weight, you'll go back to being, where you were, because if you put on a 50-pound pack, you're going to be slower. So if you're going around overweight, if you're 20 or 30 or 40 pounds overweight, it's just like carrying that pack. So you got to lose the weight. So, okay, I doubled down on the standard diet protocol, calorie in, calorie out, let's lift weights and build muscle so we can burn more fat, and the whole thing that we all know is just a joke now. But I was essentially got in a situation where I was running 3 to 5 miles every day for 5 days a week, and then 6 days a week I was weight training for 2 hours a day. I was eating a very strict diet, 1,800 to 2,200 calories a day, under the guidance of a dietitian, hard, healthy grains, the whole deal. And what happened? I gained 50% of my starting body weight. I went from 191 pounds of solid steel and sex appeal up to 272 pounds of a lard ass. So that's what calorie in, calorie out gets you, and that's what the standard American diet gets you if you have severe insulin resistance, metabolic issues, and digestion issues, which I did because of the work I did with those chemicals. So what happened was, the reason I got worse and worse for so long is because I was misdiagnosed. It was like, oh, I have breathing problems. Well, you're in a new area, you need to acclimate, just give it a little bit of time, push it a little harder. Okay, well, I'm still having some problems, I'm slowing down, like something's not right. Well, you're gaining a little bit of weight, let's try to eat healthy, go low fat, blah, 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 blah. And it just didn't work. And the combination of working with the chemicals plus the misdiagnosis plus the calorie in, calorie out type of dysfunctional diet mentality, all that added up in this really weird, a very strange set of tumblers had to all fall into place to open this odd door down this path I'm at. So that's kind of what happened.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And
in a nutshell.
And you were breaking yourself down in the hopes of building yourself up to be stronger, but that's just additional stress, all of that exercise.
Yes, and so that plays in with the cortisol response and all that. Plus, turns out, there's some foods that I'm pretty sensitive to. Like, I don't know if there was a problem before and I just didn't know it. I think there probably was with – I noticed these oils, especially soybean oil. I think corn oil might have a problem for me, but all those kind of vegetable seed oils – as soon as I cut those out of my diet, which was only very, very recently, by the way, so many little weird problems went away. So, there could have been some food allergies before. There could have been some insulin resistance before. But, man, working with those chemicals just totally changed my whole metabolism.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're here to tell your story.
Thanks.
And, share, glad you're here to share your story. We're just going to free flow, Jimmy, if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
All right. So what comes to mind is, is there sort of a silver lining in that experience with being exposed to those chemicals? Because now, you're here, compared to, where maybe use myself as an example. I could have easily just coasted through the standard American diet and been overweight and sick and not think anything was wrong because like you described, just following the wrong dietary advice, following the wrong nutrition information, and beating myself up physically in hopes to better my physical self and well-being. But it seems like, getting that exposure, sure, it really wrecked your body, but it got you here. It got you to immediately see what the impact of not just the chemicals, but things like these industrial seed oils, things like, the bad advice, the healthy grains, if you will. Do you feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. I honestly, truly believe all is as it should be. We make decisions in our lives and things happen and, we can't necessarily control it. And, people you can't ever think about going back. You are where you are. It's water under the bridge. There was a time when I was pretty upset by it because I was like, well, if anybody would have just freaking listened in the first place, we probably could have figured it out, but it doesn't matter because, there's all these other, the path diverged from where it was going to go and it ended up where it is, and actually if that wouldn't have happened, I would never have met the woman who became my wife because I met her through this weird thing because when I was hurt and sick, I was in a different whole routine. Everything was different. My work schedule was different because I had doctor's appointments. My life schedule was different because I couldn't go to the gym as much. There was all things that were different because of that initial sickness and those injuries. And, as you start to gain weight, and as you start to age, if you fall down, it's a little bit harder to get back up. You don't recover quite as quick. And so, getting hurt and getting overweight like that, when I did have I'd trip and fall or something, it was a lot harder on my body because I remember one time I had this really bad ankle sprain. And it was before I was at my worst. It was when I was on my way to being, I would say, the peak of my injury or the nadir of my health, if you will. I was on my way there, and I was still really trying to be physically fit and work out. And I was doing I was practicing some ground fighting with one of my buddies, and I had this really bad ankle sprain. And at the time, I was pretty overweight. I can't remember how overweight I was, but I was probably 30, 40 pounds overweight at the time. And if you have an ankle sprain, it's bad enough. And when you're walking around with an extra 40 pounds on you, you overcompensate. So then, okay, you hurt the left ankle in my case. So then the next thing is you hurt your right knee because you got to overcompensate for the ankle, right? It goes in a zigzag motion up your body. And then, of course, if you let it go and you don't have any rest or proper recovery, then it goes from your right knee to your left hip up to your mid back and your neck. And before you know it, head to toe, you're just, like Vinny says, you're being crushed under the weight of your own weight.
Wow.
But yeah, there's definitely a silver lining because my life would not be the life that I have now, or who knows, I might not even be alive at all. You never know.
I want to touch on how you sort of got things all in order to be where you are now, but I wanted to mention a little bit. I mean, my deal isn't, I didn't have what you have, but in my own way, I had ailments and things that happened to me that I never connected to be all tied into just overall unhealth because of diet and lifestyle. Things like, I remember when I was in elementary school, I would get these weird lesions on my fingertips, kind of like these pus balls, if you will, or bubbles, and it was just weird. I didn't know where they came from, and I was told by the doctor and my mom that, oh, it's probably because you're allergic to eggs. I'm like, why? What's wrong with eggs? Like, oh, because they've got cholesterol. So I'm like, oh, okay. And mom's like, well, while you're at it, let's just eliminate chicken as well. So here we are. I'm being told to eliminate the two of the most nutritious, not the most, but pretty nutritious food out there, eliminating healthy food from my diet, right?
Right.
And if it wasn't these lesions on my fingertips, they were just like eczema, whole body or patches here and there. And that was like from first grade on. And then when fifth grade rolled around, then I started to put on weight. I started becoming that chubby kid, for what chubby was back in the 80s,
Right.
And all the way through junior high, I was heavy. And so these were things that, like, I look back and know that they were just signs that it's unhealth going on. Then, freshman year of high school, I started developing migraines, and they were, pretty gnarly, and just another one of those things that I look back on. By high school, my body composition, I thinned out, I was pretty active. I was still eating pretty crappy. And so once I was done with high school and all that activity, I got a job. Guess what happens when you're young and you have a job? You just spend your money on more crap food.
Yeah.
So I put the weight back on, and I still had the skin issues. I still had the migraines, and so looking back, those are signs. I'm fortunate to get past that, and now when I have things like the migraine or things like the patch of eczema or some weird thing going on, it's just a sign that says, hey, wake up, something's off, you got to fix it. It might be something wrong with your diet, it might be something wrong with your lifestyle. So I now view them as cues that I need to sort myself out, because if I don't, I sort of look at those things as good things, right? The bad things are the good things because they're the bad things that say, hey, fix it. I'm letting you know. But, back to you, how did you, with everything that's been happening with you, how did you get yourself healthy?
Well, it's been a really long journey. When I first started working with that stuff, it was back in 2007, and I didn't end that particular job until I stopped working with the chemicals in like late 2009, so almost 2010, and then I finally I was able to leave that job partway through 2010, and at that time, I would say my worst of the sickness or injury or the opposite of my best health would have been sometime in late 2009, right before I really stopped working with the chemicals. Number one, I changed jobs. I stopped working with those chemicals. And about 6 months after that, and again, most of my diet and exercise routine did not change for a very, very, very long time. So in a certain time period when I pinpoint that there was a weight gain because of the chemical exposure, I know because I've eliminated everything else. It couldn't have been diet and exercise. And the only time I slowed down on diet and exercise was when I started getting too injured and heavy to keep doing a lot of that stuff. Totally had no idea. And I just kept doing as much as I could and doubling down on the same nonsense advice, but I was still doing what I could. And so I stopped working with the chemicals. Well, 6 months later, I magically lost 10 pounds. And I was like, wait, okay, cool. I'm doing something right. Let me go sweat a little more. Let me go run a little more. I still was in the mentality, but I knew that eating a certain number of calories per day, regardless of what that food was, wasn't right. And for a long time, I worked in restaurants, actually. My first job when I was a little kid, my parents, they'd take me to work with them because they didn't have money for a babysitter. And I was 10 years old. I started sweeping floors and washing dishes, bussing tables, things like that, pick up a little money. And the chef kind of liked me, and he sort of took me under his wing when I was pretty young, and he taught me how to safely move around a kitchen and handle a knife. So when I got older, there was a period for a long time where I worked in restaurants, and I thought, let me go back to my roots of cooking and just try to figure this out from a food perspective. Let me go back to that because I know that. I know I can maybe make some money because I needed a job. Like my job's just changed. And so I kind of went back to my roots of cooking. And I actually spent a year at the Art Institute of Seattle in their culinary program. And then I actually left the program. I dropped out because I wanted to help support my wife's career. But that's a whole nother story. But I went back to my roots of cooking. And then I was like, something's not right in our food supply. I started watching all these documentaries like Food Inc. back in the day. You remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
And,
oh, yeah.
King Corn was another one I watched. And I started realizing, wow, there's not as much variety in the food as we like to think there is. And then I realized, wow, what's this big thing that's everywhere? High fructose corn syrup. Let me eliminate that completely. So that was my second big change in health. And this was back in like 2010. Totally eliminated high fructose corn syrup. A couple months later, another 10 pounds magically gone. No change in diet and exercise. Actually, less exercise because I didn't have as much time. And then from there, I went into the route of the Michael Pollan route of eat plants, eat food, mostly plants, not too much. And that was kind of making me feel good. I was still pretty sick, though, because I had all these chemicals stuck inside me, and I was misdiagnosed. So I was taking all these pharmaceuticals that were just awful. I mean, wreaking more havoc. At one time, I was prescribed 13 different pharmaceutical medications.
Wow, a baker's dozen.
Yeah, and some of them were contraindicated if you took one of the other ones. I brought it up to a doctor.
Wonderful.
And yeah, she says, waves her hand. Oh, that's cool, man. What you do, you take the ones in the morning and you take the other ones at night, so you just space them out. Like, you're good. And I'm like, I don't think that's good.
Yeah. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah. So I actually spent quite a bit of my own money out of pocket on second, third, and fourth opinions to really just sort of piece together what had happened. And it took a good year and a half to really even get some solid guesses as to what was going on. And I ended up talking to this one doctor, happened to be a naturopath, or she had a naturopathic certification added on. She was also an MD. And she said, she kind of mentioned offhandedly she had a lot of auto mechanics in my same position, and she thought it might be some of the chemicals I was working with. And I said, oh, that's interesting, because, finally somebody started listening, and we started going through that, and she put me on a detox protocol. I went through a couple detox protocols with her that were very, very difficult. It's rough getting that poison out of your body. And I followed her advice for a while, and, I did okay, but like I said, at my worst, I was 272. And doing all this stuff, like getting away from the chemicals, was obviously number one. Cutting out high fructose corn syrup, then kind of following Michael Pollan's advice, and then really getting into the local, seasonal, organic kind of thing, until I realized how hijacked the organic label had become. So again, down the rabbit hole we go. And that's been such a long journey, and that was, for a long time, I was at kind of a plateau where I didn't really know what else to do. I had done everything I could cooking-wise. I was in a certain shape, and there was only so much I could do physically. So, again, I did what I could. I said, well, I can't run, I'll walk. No big deal. I'll just walk. And then about, let's see, when was it? It was several years later, I think it was 2013, I found out about Zone 2 heart rate training. And that was through a guy I came across. I was watching Shark Tank, and there was a guy named Ryan Eman. He calls himself Ryan the Cowboy Eman, something like that. And he has this whole cowboy fit zone course thing or whatever. And I was like, well, this is kind of interesting because this guy had a really bad injury, and he gained a bunch of weight, and now he took all the weight off. Let me see what he's talking about. So I signed up for his initial mailing list, and I don't even think that they do this anymore, but he sent out this little video, and he said, hey, introduced himself, and he was really honest in the video about what made his system work. And he said, if you already know how to exercise, you don't need to buy my system, and I don't want you to waste your money unless you think it'll be fun. And he explained that the whole thing was about his calculator, and he had figured this out. And so I basically broke down what his little calculator program was, and it was putting you into Zone 2. And he had you warm up in Zone 1. And he says, do an 11-minute warm-up at this heart rate, which turns out to be Zone 1, and then do your workout for 30 to 45 minutes in Zone 2, and then cool back down in Zone 1. And that was essentially it. And he has a whole thing around it and his own workouts and everything, but I love the guy because he's so honest about what makes it work, and he only says you need his program if you want to have fun with it and you don't know how to exercise. So I figured out Zone 2 training, and I realized looking back what had helped me so long ago beat childhood obesity, because I was walking and riding my bike everywhere. So then I said, aha, there's something that might help. And by this time I was down to 240. I was yo-yoing in between like 242 and 252, like in that 10-pound range. I could not figure it out. Of course, my favorite food was pasta and bread. So I started pushing my kid, and at the time, my oldest daughter was just a little baby, and my wife was working because I was supporting her career, and I was like, wow, I can just push my kid around the stroller and meet this heart rate calculator thing. And so I started doing that, and after a while, I didn't lose much weight, but I dropped some inches, like seriously, like pulled in the notches on the belt. Even though the scale wasn't moving, I thought, hey, screw it, it feels good. But then the problem is, if you move off your zone 2 training protocol and you're still eating the bad foods, that's where the yo-yoing came in. And it wasn't until late in 2014, like August of 2014, I was living in Vermont. We had moved from Seattle to Denver to Vermont in this whole like long, we trying to go where the work is, trying to, just figure out where we were going to be. We've had some amazing adventures. But up in Vermont, I found a doctor, a really young doctor. She was in her second or third year of practice, and she was an MD, another MD naturopath. And she did some tests on me, and she said, "Oh, well, they didn't used to do this, and it's kind of controversial. Not all my peers really agree with me, but I tested you for this genetic markers, and it turns out that you can't absorb B12 that well through your intestine, and we know because these genetic markers you have." So she boosted me up with some shots, and then she put me on a sublingual supplement, and I felt great. She figured out what vitamins I was deficient in, so we got that. So I started thinking clearer and feeling better. And then she said, "You might want to try to cut out gluten." And I said, "Okay, why?" And because I had heard of it, I'd been skeptical. I was the most anti-low-carb person in the whole world up until this point, because back, I think it was like late 90s, early 2000s. Sometimes I tried Atkins when I first heard about it. I did it completely wrong. I was totally miserable. I had no idea what I was doing. And I said, "This is stupid." So I just gave that up. And then I was like, well, why should I do this no gluten thing? It doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. And she said, "I don't know." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean you don't know? You're telling me to do it and you don't know?" And she said, "Well, I don't know why. I just know that in some of my patients, when I tell them to cut out gluten and they do, they feel better. So just try it for 30 days. Cut out anything that has gluten in it. Don't eat it. And then after 30 days, I want you to go eat whatever you want. What's your favorite meal?" And I said, "Lasagna." She said, "Great, go have a lasagna. See how it makes you feel. And if you feel fine, well, just go back to eating whatever you were eating before. It doesn't matter, But if you don't feel fine, then maybe you should cut it out. But you don't have celiac disease, so I can't say you're allergic to it. But just try it and let me know, because I'm kind of curious." And she was trying to pull data together. So I tried it. I cut out I was so sad. I had to throw out my panko breadcrumbs. We had to get rid of our pasta.
Aww.
The bread, the beer. I couldn't have beer anymore because that's made from whatever. And I was like, okay, let me try it. So I cut it out for 30 days, and I said, I don't know if I feel any better or not. But I guess overall with the vitamins and we tried to eat pretty healthy or whatever. I guess I felt better, but then when I tried to eat the gluten again, I got so sick. I just felt horrible. Like I can't even describe it. I felt terrible. But what was interesting? I didn't lose a single pound in that month, but I dropped about 4 or 5 inches off my waist.
Wow.
It was all inflammation and a slightly distended abdomen. Yeah. And that was a big wake up. I was like, wow, maybe I do have a problem with gluten. And that just sort of went on as a no gluten thing from over a year. It was like August 2014 I found out about it, and then I was convinced I had a problem with gluten, so I avoided it like the plague. And at that time, I would say that I had cut out most of the processed foods anyway. I had changed my sleep. I had, I'd done other things that contribute to overall health. So when I cut out the gluten and I got so much better, I said, wow, that's amazing. I can't ever have this again, which kind of sucks. But if it's what I have to do, then it's what I have to do. And that was it. And then I lost some weight, but I guess I was kind of holding steady around 242, 245. but I was still eating some other grains. I still would eat rice and oats and, sugars as well, chocolate. I love, I used to love my sweet iced tea and things like that. But for let's see, August 2014 to October 2015 is when I first found out about NSNG. And then, wow, that changed everything. When I first heard Vinny Tortorich on his first appearance on the Adam Carolla Show in October 2015, and it was a really odd thing because I don't generally listen to Carolla. I used to listen to him a lot, and at the time I just didn't have time to listen to any podcasts, and it was a really kind of a bored afternoon. I had nothing to do. I had just moved to California recently. I was having trouble finding steady work because I had relocated. And I thought, let me see what Carolla's got going on. At least I can have a laugh. And it was this fitness trainer guy. And he was like talking about like eat eggs in the morning instead of cereal and bagels and, do all this other stuff. And I was like, it makes sense what he's saying. Let me just try it. And so I just started trying a few things that I'd heard Vinny say on that one show. And I immediately started losing the weight. It just melted off. And I wasn't exercising at all. Nothing for 8 weeks. I did nothing except change my eating. And then I said, this guy's a fucking genius. I gotta learn more about him. So I started listening to his show, and when I found about Anna Vocino and her recipes and things, my background in the kitchen pretty much, I think it qualifies me to evaluate if somebody is a good cook or not, or makes a good recipe. And I was so impressed with Anna, and she became such an inspiration to me that I started my own thing based on that. And yeah, that's kind of how it all evolved over the past 10 years or so of getting injured to figuring out the initial things. It's a long, long journey, and there were all these little pieces that came in. It was like finding little breadcrumbs along the trail pointing me in the right direction. And that's kind of how the long, drawn-out version of where we are right now.
Wow. If Vinny and Anna, if they listen to this episode, they ought to think about getting some sort of film together. Those types of films where there are a bunch of different storylines from about characters, and they all sort of converge or diverge, and
yeah,
they gotta get your story, my story, and there's just hundreds of other folks in the group, in the Facebook group. How they've all sort of stumbled upon, bad health and regained their health through, diet and changing lifestyle, and all coming together with somehow interacting with this thing that we have in common with this no sugar, no grains lifestyle that, comes from Vinny.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if whatever Vinny and Anna, if they ever wanted my help with anything, they, of course, whatever. I mean, open invitation. It's funny too because I don't know them. I don't know Vinny. I don't really know Anna. I've met them. I met them at one of the big fat shows, the first one in Pasadena.
Yeah.
Because I live close enough that I can get over to Pasadena. Had them sign the book. I met Serena and Andy and their whole little crowd, and they're beyond generous with all their time and with their fans and everything. And they've been on my show. Anna's actually done a couple of episodes. That's gonna be coming out soon. Some more of her stuff. And
awesome.
It's so great. But I don't know them. They're just people that do something that helped me that I was able to contact because the age we live in, the gatekeepers are gone. Anybody can write a book or do a show or whatever. And they're so generous to their fans over the phone. Personally, I don't really care how they feel about me because we don't know each other. It's not like we're, coworkers or something like that, but they're such they've done work, and they've created products that have benefited my life in such great ways that I'm always going to be indebted to them to help, spread their message and whatever they're doing.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Yeah, we have that in common. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do anything if they want to do it or whatever. But yeah, happy to share my story with whoever it helps, and that's kind of what we're all doing.
You have a incredible story, and I hope that when folks listen to your story, that they learn tremendous from it. When you were telling your story about working with the chemicals, sometimes we don't think about exposure to stuff that affects us. Here at home, we're thinking about things like, okay, we're going to minimize the plastic as much as possible. When we heat food up, we're not going to, put hot food on some sort of plastic surface. We're going to use the ceramic. We're going to use the glass. We both on my wife's side and my side, we have family who's worked in, what do you call it? The salons or the beauty shops and stuff like that. So, there's that exposure to stuff. And this day and age, we're lucky that we have, all this information out there, and there are folks that are outside or beyond the typical medical sort of training who are willing to be that doctor like you described, who says, I don't know why, but what I'm seeing with people who are cutting out gluten, this is what's happening, so I want you to try. I can't explain why. I really appreciate that honesty, and they're willing to put themselves out there even though they don't know why, to better your health, to better the patient. It's really awesome.
Hell yeah.
Man, we jumped right into it. I just couldn't help it with the free flow format. And, I just briefly said, we've got the great Jimmy Lee from the Inner Fire podcast. Can you talk about what you do with the podcast, your whole deal with the podcast, and how it, everything that you want to share about it here?
Sure. Yeah. So Inner Fire podcast, it's called that because the whole point is to light your inner fire. You need to have something like you see people go through this life and they just focus on paying their bills or, going to work every day or whatever, which, you got to do. But if that's your whole life, then you really have nothing. You're like a zombie. You're dead. You got nothing to live for. So the whole point is you got to light your inner fire and get fired up about something. It doesn't matter if you're a bank teller or if you're, a janitor, or if you throw trash you pick up trash for the city for a living. Great. Just have some focus other than what your job is, because a lot of people ask, what do you do for a living? When you meet somebody. My answer is, for a living, I spend time with my kids and I teach them, things, and I spend time with my family and I enjoy my life. That's what I do for a living, because that's life.
Nice.
Now, income, that can be a struggle. And so I realized that through my journey and thinking about my health and my fitness and everything that's, come across my path in my life, the one big thing that I was really missing, and that a lot of people are missing, is that peace of mind. And it's because I had been ignoring it for so long. I had all the tools. I already knew how to find that peace of mind. You have it inside you too. Everybody does, but we forget about it. We're born knowing everything we need to know. And we go through this world and we have these experiences. We're on this journey. And so I thought, really we're all on the same journey. And that's that we are seeking health, fitness, and peace of mind, because you need your health, because nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to suffer. You want to be reasonably fit. You don't have to be the top athlete, but you want to do the things you want to do. If you want to go hike up to the top of a hill to get a good view, you should be able to do that and not have to stop halfway up, you know? And I got kids, you know, I want to be able to pick them up over my head and laugh with them and play and run around. So we want to be reasonably fit no matter what we do, just to get up and walk out of the chair. And then peace of mind. I have seen some stellar, amazing physical fitness studs that threw their whole careers away because of an alcohol problem. Or, you know, other people that owned a business that lost everything and ended up homeless because of a drug addiction or whatever. Why do you think that is? It's not about the drug or the alcohol. It's about the relationship they build with the behavior because of their peace of mind. They're lacking peace of mind. And there's a great video on YouTube. It's called Everything You Think You Know About Addiction Is Wrong. And he talks about drug addiction. It could apply to any addictive behavior or substance. Or if you really think about what he's saying in that 12-minute talk, I think it's the man's name is Johan Hari, if I remember correctly. Everything you know about addiction is wrong. It really feeds into when you see these amazing athletes or physically fit people and they just do something stupid and just throw their whole career away or lose their health or whatever. It's because they ignored their spirit. They ignored their peace of mind. They ignored that whole aspect. So without that, your health and fitness mean nothing because you'll lose them. Or even if you maintain your health and fitness, you're going to be miserable. So you might have a stroke or a heart attack just from the stress of what you're not dealing with. And that could be anything because we all have a different journey to live, but that journey is all the same, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah, and so that's the whole point of the show is that I realized that this NSNG way of eating, this low-carb, ketogenic type of diet really helped me. But then I came across some people that it didn't work for. It just didn't help. So then I thought, wow, I got to figure out what's going on. And then I just, by talking to other people, people that are like, oh, that's the stupidest thing in the world, just like I used to say. And people that are like, you know, I tried that and I realized I had to tweak this, that, or the other. I thought, wow, this would make some good conversation. So I wanted to talk to people about health, fitness, and peace of mind. And then I thought, how can I do that? Because you want to have a conversation. You don't, you know, I mean, you want to have some kind of direction, right? So I thought a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step was the first thing I thought. And I thought, wow,
nice.
Why do we bother to take that single step? Why? Who cares? Well, because we're motivated. So what motivates people, you know? And then there's a lot of people that like the motivational quotes. Some people have their own quote. Like I love Dr. Ann Childers. I asked her for a motivational quote, and she said, cut carbs, you'll feel better. That's what motivates me. And I was like, that's amazing, you know? And
yes,
I had Amber O'Hearn, the keto carnivore, on, and she has a process of what she likes to do that motivates her. And so everybody's a little different, you know, and I want to know what lights your fire. So that's the whole point of asking about that motivation. And then, of course, I cover health, fitness, and peace of mind for the individual. And then I realized that going along the journey, you know, some people like to say adapt and overcome, right? So what that really means is there's challenges and obstacles, and you're going to adapt or overcome to those challenges and obstacles in your life. And everybody does that in a different way. And sometimes it's different for each situation, or sometimes people have kind of a way that they go, and that's really what it's all about. And then, of course, I talk about their work their journey a little more free-form stuff after the questions. And that's pretty much the show in a nutshell. It's all about the journey we share in life. And so, like I say at the beginning of every episode, you're listening to Inner Fire Podcast. The point is that you want to light your inner fire. You want to stoke the flames and forge your mind, body, and spirit for that journey towards health, fitness, and peace of mind. Because, really, we're all always continually trying to improve along that journey as well. Because if we stop learning and growing and improving, we're probably done here and we can check out and go on to the next phase, wherever that place is or whatever that is. So the whole point of forging the mind, body, and spirit is because you're not the same as you were yesterday. You never will be. You cannot be, because every single day is completely different. You are different than you were yesterday at a cellular level, because your cells divide, things change, your hair grows, your nail grows. You're a little different. You're not standing in the same place. You can never step in the same river twice, right? Because the current keeps flowing. It's never going to be the same, and you're never going to be the same. So that means, therefore, you can only be better or you can only be worse. So every single day, and I don't always do this, even though I got to try to be a little bit better than you were the day before. And that just means you got to keep trying to forge that mind, body, and spirit. You have to drink water and drive on. You have to just adapt and overcome. And through it all, hopefully, at the end of the journey, you'll have learned a little something, whether that's the end of the show or the end of our journey here in life. Let's make it a life worth having lived. And let's make it a show worth having listened to. So I just want everybody to have as much fun listening as I do making it.
Dude, that's fantastic. Oh God, so many thoughts while you were describing that. One is, we need keep doing what you're doing, Jimmy, because you know what it's like. You turn on the news, and there's just a lot of negative stuff, right? I mean, I've been there where I've put on an inspiring podcast. I've turned on an audio book, and I learned something new. It inspired me to take action and try new things. And that's when you're taking that action, when you're inspired, when you, like you described, have that inner fire, man, you're set to live. You're set to go. You're set to take action, right? It's so depressing. I don't turn on the news anymore. I tune out the stuff that's on the feed, the social media feeds, all that negative stuff. And when I watch people around me who do pay attention to all that stuff, you can see they've got this dark aura, because they're troubled by stuff that they could stand and just ignore. So keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you on this podcast, you're I want to say the first and last guest of Ruel's Running Podcast this year in 2017.
Nice.
I've not had any guests on until now. So, thank you for coming on.
Well, you saved the best for last. That's why I'm the first and last.
You're the first and last. That's right. But what else came to mind? There's a lot of stuff to love there with what you do. I mean, your podcast has tons of guests that, everybody should, tap into and see, what inspires them, and see if there's something new that they can take with them and share. With that, how about I roll into some questions so we can have the audience learn more about the great Jimmy Lee?
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
All right.
Health IQ rated 9.6 out of 10 on Trustpilot. Customers love them. You know Ryan Hall, the fastest marathoner in American history and the only United States athlete to break the 1 hour time for the half marathon. This is what he has to say about Health IQ. Quote, "It's perfect because it's made for people like me with a healthy, active lifestyle." Unquote. The lower heart rates that many pro athletes have can sometimes negatively affect insurance rates. Hall liked the fact that Health IQ used this active lifestyle as an asset in getting a good life insurance rate rather than it being a detriment. He commented that he appreciated how Health IQ made the process easy and simple for him, given how limited his time already was. Health IQ is the fastest growing life insurance company with over $5 billion in coverage. So, like saving money on your car insurance for being a good driver, Health IQ saves you money on your life insurance for living a health-conscious lifestyle. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/Ruel or mention the promo code RUEL when you talk to a Health IQ agent today.
Okay, in the past I've asked this first, and I want to kind of keep it going, and it's something that I adopted from having listened to the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he basically asks his guests, "Tell me what you had for breakfast."
Okay, well, breakfast doesn't really work well for me.
Okay.
It hasn't for a long time. And again, that's this hindsight. And I'm not saying people shouldn't eat breakfast or whatever. And I've seen people go into the whole paleo ancestry, what did our ancestors eat, way too far, and even be like, well, if our ancestors were hunter-gatherers, they weren't eating really breakfast. They would have to get up and go hunt and all that. I'm not quite there. I just don't eat breakfast because it doesn't make me feel good. It just bogs me down too much, and I just don't feel like I have that get up and go. And actually, again, hindsight is always 20/20. Looking back on these metabolic issues I've had, part of that was my digestion. So for a while now, everything's a little bit normal, but it's supposed to be like 3 hours after you eat, your entire stomach contents are now empty. There shouldn't be anything left. But I was finding out that 4, 5, 6 hours later, I still had stuff in my stomach. It wasn't digesting, so there was problems there. So if I'd eat a late dinner or something like that, wake up in the morning, there's a good chance there's still food in there. So no wonder I wasn't hungry. Like, my body was all out of whack. And so I spent so long not eating first thing in the morning that when I do, even though now my body is digesting normally and things, it usually doesn't work out well for me. So I tend not to eat breakfast. I did not have breakfast today, but I did have coffee. When I do eat breakfast, I don't have a plan. It's either going to be eggs or it's going to be leftover steak from the night before. I love leftover steak. Pretty much leftovers from the night before or some eggs. It depends on the day, what I have time for, all that kind of stuff. But this morning, what I did for breakfast was I got up and I made myself a nice cup of espresso. I love my stovetop espresso maker.
Nice.
Currently, I'm going through a big can of Cafe Bustelo, and what I love about the stovetop espresso maker is you can have it anywhere. So if you have a gas stove, an electric stove, a conduction stove, whatever it is, and if you travel, you know how the hotel always has that iron in the room that almost nobody uses anymore?
Oh, I know where this is going.
Take your stovetop espresso maker, you flip that iron upside down and turn it on. You can put that right on top, and you got your fresh, your nice espresso. You don't have to leave, go down to the Starbucks. You're right in your hotel room. You can have your espresso. So I love the stovetop espresso maker. And since I'm at home and I'm not using an iron on a hotel countertop, what I do is after I make the espresso, it's too hot right away to drink. You want to let it sit there for a second because it's made with steam, which is the hottest cooking method that we have. So it's super hot. So I set it aside just on the metal of the stovetop, and then I take a small saucepan, just a regular little saucepan, and I put it on and I pour in some half and half, and I turn on the fire, and as that's heating up and steaming, I'll whip air into it with either a fork or a whisk or whatever's clean, and you end up with the same consistency, like way freaking better than you get in a Starbucks or a coffee shop. So I started my day out with an awesome breve latte. I used some Cafe Bustelo in my stovetop espresso maker and whipped up the steamed milk right on my stove by hand. And that was breakfast today.
That's awesome.
Along with my supplements, of course.
That's awesome. The question should have been, what's the most interesting way to make your coffee? That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a coffee guy. The first thing I got to do is have coffee, and it's what I love. It wakes me up, the way I want to be woken up. It gets my juices flowing, if you will. It gets me thinking, because I got to get up. I got 3 kids. I gotta get, the meal started and all that good stuff. Real quick, I was thinking about how when I was a kid, I wasn't into breakfast. It just felt wrong. It felt wrong being told eat. You just woke up. I mean, your system really is all it's waking up, and I don't feel like eating. Why am I gonna start stuffing food in my face? But over the years, you sort of get conditioned to do it because you were told to as a kid, and then you're following that standard breakfast mealtime schedule, and it doesn't really, at least you've learned it, I've learned it, that we've learned it doesn't serve us. But I'm like you, coffee, and when I do have breakfast, it's going to be eggs, it's going to be bacon, or it's just going to be eggs.
Nice. Yes, absolutely.
All right, let's go roll into tell me.
I wanted to note with the coffee too, I didn't do it this morning, and I don't do it if I drink the coffee. I often don't drink coffee when I first wake up. It'll usually be a little while after I wake up, just because I like to get a little extra sleep in the morning, and you know what? I'm a stay-at-home dad, so I'm not rushing off to the office or whatever. So I'll usually like to sleep a little bit and then get my kids to school, and then I'll come back and have my coffee. And if I'm not drinking it first thing in the morning, I like to put in a tablespoon of coconut oil. I don't whip it up or blend it or anything. I just drop it in there, and it feels good. It's a nice little different flavor. It's a good mouthfeel. There's a million different reasons why, but so that's just a little aside on the coffee.
Oh yeah, I like switching it up a little bit, just like that. Coconut oil, definitely. The mouthfeel. I mean, right now it's getting pretty chilly here in Northern California, and keeps your lips nice and moist.
Yeah, and what's great too about coconut oil, if you're in California or Colorado or Washington, there's a great ingredient you can mix with your coconut oil, but I'll leave that to you to figure out.
I have not thought about that. I'll have to look into that.
Anyways, moving on.
Now, let's see. Tell me, what activity are you into these days to keep you fit? And how do you incorporate that into your day-to-day or your week?
Well, for me, for keeping fit, I've really gone through a long journey of what that means and why I want to exercise. So for me, keeping fit, the main activity I do is just plain movement. Just got to keep moving when I can. And a lot of people might call that calisthenics. I do love traditional calisthenic exercises, but it doesn't always have to be that. It can be picking up both of my kids, which together is about 70 pounds a kid, and walking down the street for a couple blocks. That's pretty good. It makes me feel good. They love it. They love the big hug and everything, and it's nice. Or picking them up over my head and just doing presses, like shoulder presses with my kid, and they're like, yeah, you lifted me up, and all that stuff. So Any kind of movement, calisthenics, or whatever. I do love weight training, but I've had to back off on that because I hurt my arm earlier in the summer, and I've really wanted to make sure it heals so I don't cause any further damage. But I'm about to go back to the gym. I feel it's healed enough and that I won't cause any further injury as long as I stretch right, rest, use my brace and all that stuff. So I'm looking at going back into the weight room coming up soon. As soon as I can get a little help watching the little one during the day, I'm going to start going back, and I'm going to try the super slow weightlifting protocol. So I'm going to probably fill in folks on how that worked out and everything when that time comes. But for right now, it's just movement, calisthenics, whether that's walking, push-ups, or lifting my kids.
Love it. I love it. I'm with you with that, with just movement. If I know that I'm not going to be able to get a run in, at the very least what I'm doing is I have a little bit of a hike to get from where I park the vehicle to hop on a train to get to San Francisco, and then I got to do that at the end of the day, as well as the little bit of hike to get from the train station to the office. And I love standing at my desk. I don't have a stand-up desk, but I just put enough stuff over my keyboard and I raise my monitor enough so that I can get some good visibility, and I'll just stand and kind of shift my weight, listen to music, bob around. Just sometimes I don't even sit at all at the office. The only sitting I get to do is when I'm in the train, if I'm lucky to get a seat, or when I finally get to my vehicle when I pick up the kids. So I'm with you with that movement.
You got to keep moving, and it really doesn't matter what you do as long as you like doing it, because then you're going to keep doing it. And honestly, as far as like keeping fit, like the only thing I care about is having an overall strong body. So the only needs I have there are about 5 different exercises: pull-ups, push-ups, dips, sit-ups, lunges. If I just did that, I know that I'm going to keep my overall strength. But that being said, there's other things that I want to do to help not just maintain my muscle mass and strength, but make sure that I go into aging with a solid body to help minimize some of these aging-related injuries and things you see. So when I do weight train, I like to incorporate a lot of leg press. You can't skip leg day. You got to work on your legs and core and that kind of thing. And aside from just a good, strong body and general health and fitness, the only exercises I would even care about would be ones that would make me a better golfer. And there's about 3 or 4 of those that I see that I could incorporate, to really help pick up my game.
Sweet. All right. Moving right along, we've got we know what your breakfast is like, but how about your just typical day? What's your typical day like? How do you go through it? I can imagine with kids. I'm curious to know if your day is similar to my day.
Well, as far as planning goes, the only things I plan out anymore are things that require me to be somewhere at a certain time or something like that and interact with things on a time frame. I don't like to plan the day as far as what's going to happen at 7:30 and what's going to happen at 4 and things like that, because I don't really think life works that way. I recognize that we live in this society that's still based on kind of the Victorian ages, the Industrial Revolution. We're still sort of a carryover from ancient Greece and Rome in certain ways. And that Industrial Revolution we went through a while ago really changed the work day, the work week. So we're living with all these leftovers of these things that don't really work anymore. And so this society we live in requires that for the work day, for the school day, and things like that. So when I plan my day, it's just around what other people require of planning. Like, I got to get my kid to school at 7:50. That's when the bell rings. She's got to be there. I got to pick her up at 11:50 because that's when lunch is over. I've got to be there. Beyond that, I don't try to plan, and I kind of try to let the day flow, because if I try to plan, I get way too crazy making with it, and I drive myself insane if I can't check off all the boxes on the task. And that's just not how the world works. That's definitely not how we evolved. That's definitely not how our ancestors did it. And so yeah, I try to not plan as much as I can within reason. And, I don't want my, anything bad to happen, so I have to plan some stuff. And my typical day is, it's actually pretty great. My typical day is I wake up, I get my kids dressed, I get the one to school, and I come back home with the other one. And then in the morning, for the first half of the day, I basically break up the day into two halves. When there's the morning time, I only have the one kid, and she is kind of like loving her little bit of independence, that, oh, my sister's not home, I can use any of the toys and things like that. So I will let her just free play, and if she wants to have time with me or read a book or whatever, we'll do that. But I take that time where it's just her and me to really do work around the house. So if I have to work outside or clean inside or get some work done online, that's sort of what I do. And then the second half of the day, I try to do as much as I can with the kids, but that doesn't always happen because there is stuff to get done. So it's kind of we'll see what we need to do and get it done. If we're out of groceries, we go to the grocery store. If we have groceries, we do something else, that kind of thing. So I want to let my kids have as much free play and development as they can. I want to give them as much of myself as I can as a father while I'm home with them and they're little, and cherish this time. But at the same time, I can't let them run the house. I have to be the adult, and I have to be the one to make sure that things happen. So my typical day is basically making sure my children survive and are somewhat happy.
Awesome. As I inadvertently make my screen go dark. Okay. Whew, I almost lost you. Thank you for describing your day. From what you said, it's probably like, just my day. But I'm curious because, we have our own approach to the day, and to hear somebody else kind of go through similar things like you, it just helps to not feel so alone,
Hey, I'm glad.
There's a video that I shared on online. It was a comedian who basically compared the individual adult who has no kids to the adult with the parent, and you can tell his tone was sort of kind of bitter against folks who don't have kids. Right. It was sort of like what's it like for you to leave the house when you have no kids? It's like, oh, let's leave the house and just walk out of the house.
Yeah.
Right? Compared to, you have a bunch of kids, like, put on your shoes, where's your coat, get over here. And, you go through this whole scene just to get out of the house when you have a bunch of kids. It's not complaint. It's just different.
That's true. It's so true.
That was hilarious. Now, you're a really motivated guy. You gotta be to host the Inner Fire podcast, because that's essentially what we're talking about, right? So, how does the man who's motivated 100% stay motivated? What motivates you, to do what you do?
Okay, well, I don't always stay motivated 100% because I'm a human being, like everybody listening. And, I put out the show as best I can. I do everything I can to stay motivated. Sometimes I have my own battles with not feeling good. But what really does always bring it around and keep me motivated is the whole reason that I do anything is because I have my wife and kids and I have this family. I always wanted a family. I wanted a wife and kids of my own ever since I was little. So I knew I always wanted that. And now that I finally have that, it's easy to get bogged down in like, well, oh gosh, I wish I could be doing something else, but this is what it was all about, like, no, I don't miss changing diapers, but yeah, I mean, I kind of miss when my babies were little babies and now they're growing up and they're not little babies anymore. Now they're little toddlers and my one's in, the what do you call it, the TK, the little pre-K, half day program, and they're turning into little people all of a sudden on us, running around, and it's like, wow, that's kind of sad, like you don't miss all the hard stuff, but you have to cherish, all the times. And so that's what really keeps me motivated. Even when I'm having like a bad time or whatever, I just have to remember like, this is what I always wanted, because we live in a world of duality. Like our whole universe, this whole experience here on this physical plane of existence is one of duality. So there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times. You have positive, you have negative. So just trying to, basically what motivates me is, that whole philosophy that we're here on a journey, on a path, so make it count. Because whatever is coming next, there's going to be a review. And that's pretty much what they all say. And it's not about a fear or, anything like that. It's just seems to be what all of these religions and ancient cultures kind of tell us. Like, this life that you're in right now, it's not all it is, but we're here for a reason. You got to make it count, but you got to enjoy it too. So that's really what motivates me and what keeps me going and keeps me waking up every day, is that I still want to learn and be on this journey, and I appreciate every experience that I have, whether it's good or bad.
Amen. Are you like, do you feel this way? Tell me if you feel this way when I'm out like today, and eventually I'm going to round up the kids. My wife's going to come home and we're all going to be together in the evening. But as I gather each time I gather a kid, there's a little bit of completeness that I start to sense. It's like putting myself together. Every time everyone comes together, boom, and then once everybody's at home, I feel totally complete. Do you ever feel that way? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. I felt that way just the other night. My wife got home. It was her last day before her long vacation, and I just sat down, put my arm around her, and I said, "How was your day, honey? How you doing?" And I just felt great. I just wanted, and she was actually not doing that great. And she was like, "Hey, I'm great," And I was all like, "Oh, yeah, everybody's here." And she was like, "Yeah, I'm fine, whatever." And I was just like, yeah, this is what it's It's very, very complete, though. Yeah, back to that duality.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm going to skip around. I know I front-loaded you with some of these things in prep. So I'm going to skip over. We'll say, what? So, yeah, we're going to go to number 9. What's new for you? What are you coming into? And what can we expect from you in the coming future?
Okay, well, there are some projects that kind of had to get shelved. So I really want to do a series of cooking videos. That is still going to happen, but we're going to have to put that on the back burner, pun intended. My wife, she actually needs some knee surgery coming up. She's had a slip and fall and banged herself up pretty good. So, yeah, that's going to be a little bit a ways. But mainly what's coming up for me next, we got Inner Fire Podcast. That's still going strong. That website is going to be expanded. I want to take what I did before and incorporate that instead of trying to do two things. I don't want to half-ass two things. I want to make sure that it benefits people in the way that I wanted it to originally, that first website, the keto website. So what I'm going to do is, when you go to innerfirepodcast.com and go scroll down the homepage, you see the links for iTunes and Google Play, the episode list, and then there's these 3 sections that say health, fitness, and peace of mind. The original intent for that, and what's still going to happen, I'll be working on that throughout the year, is eventually you're going to be able to click on those sections, on the headline, on the picture, or whatever, and that's going to take you to a whole nother page within the site, and that'll have a lot of the common threads of the distilled advice of these things that, we're talking to people, like, really, even it goes back to Michael Pollan. I don't necessarily agree with the mostly plants part anymore, but eat real food. That's the key. That is what everybody who's taken back control of their health says, whether they're vegetarian or keto or low carb or just actually a standard diet. There's people that eat a standard friggin' diet and they just cut out the processed crap and they're fine. So I'm going to take all these little common threads, put those together, and then put some more content together from some other folks that have wanted to contribute. And the same thing with fitness and peace of mind. So you're going to see a lot of expansion on the Inner Fire Podcast website. I'm going to try to tie in some other projects I have and really get that going. I'm not sure when this show is going to air this month, right, in 2017?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
You're
so
first and last.
next month, in January, I will be participating in Dr. Sean Baker's World Carnivore Month, and I will be reporting the results through N=Many and the Trackwell app to see how that goes for me, because cool. NSNG worked amazing. It was the keystone that helped me fix my life. Keto, low carb, the lower I'm going, the better I do. I mean, I cut down to, for about 2 or 3 months, I think I was eating between 7 and 15 grams of carbs a day. It was super, super low. Felt better than ever. And then finding out about this carnivore stuff, this zero carb stuff, it's pretty interesting. I've had a few zero carb meals and zero carb days, and I haven't felt this good since before I got injured. So there's definitely something to it. I want to give it a go. So he's doing the World Carnivore Month for 30 days in January. I will be eating basically beef and water. There might be some other stuff in there. Only time will tell. Trackwell will be the recorder of history on that.
Nice.
In conjunction with World Carnivore Month, that's also when I will be delving into the super slow weightlifting protocol. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that or not, or if the listeners have, but it's basically you lift weights very slow. You lift heavy things and it's very slow, but you only do it once or twice a week. I'll be doing it once a week because that's what I'll have time for. So again, it's not like this is the new thing that I'm definitely going to be doing, but I really am curious because I've seen a lot of positive results from both of those things. And the reason I'm putting them together is just that the timing kind of happens to work. It's not anything other than that. But if you're going to be weight training, you want to have good fuel, and steak's some pretty good fuel for lifting weight. So I'm going to be doing that.
Oh, yeah, I love steak. All right, something to look forward to. I look forward to hearing, what comes out of those two experiences.
Yeah, and I'll be posting probably a lot of that stuff on Twitter, so you can follow at InnerFirePod, or I might be putting some stuff on my personal account if you want to find me on Facebook or Twitter at Sweet Jimmy Lee.
Nice. I was about to ask. So that's where they can find you on social. The listeners can find you. Can you name your websites? Can you spell out your websites?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if you want to find the show, the main social media for that is Twitter. And that's at Inner Fire Pod. The website is innerfirepodcast.com. And if you want to see the original site where it all started, that's theketogenicdietplan.com. Although that site has not been updated in a while. When I can get to it, I will update it with some new content because I've come across some great low-carb keto information too.
Awesome. Now, before we wrap up, I have that final question. It's kind of a wonky question, but I like to have fun, and hopefully you have fun with it too. Thinking back on your life, Jimmy, pick what you see as a turning point in your history. Maybe a fork, a crossroads situation, maybe not, but a significant point nonetheless. Now, you have a chance to do the Marty McFly, the Back to the Future thing, sort of, where today,
Sure.
You visit yourself at that turning point in your history, and at that moment, you have 30 seconds to tell yourself, your younger self, something. What would you tell your younger self?
Well, I'd probably just say, hey, look, I know you're going to have a lot of questions, but I can't tell you the answers. Because if I did, and if I just gave you the knowledge, no knowledge is complete without the wisdom gained from learning it along the way. So I can't tell you what's upcoming, and I can't answer your questions, but if you live your life, everything's going to be fine. It's going to work out, so enjoy it.
Boom. It's the great Jimmy Lee, folks. Thank you so much, Jimmy.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh, this is great fun.
All right. Thank you very much, Jimmy Lee. Everybody, thank you for listening, tuning in, learning more about Inner Fire Podcast, and sticking around on this silly little show. Catch you on the next episode, and remember, folks, on behalf of Jimmy Lee, I'm Ruel Abadam. Hug your family, eat something delicious, and go run something. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ruel's Running Podcast with Ruel. If you like what you just heard, share it with your friends and your enemies. Also, be sure to check out the site over at ruelsrunning.com. This has been another Coffee with Heavy Cream production. Join us next time for another silly show of Ruel's Running Podcast.